what's the benefit to Justin Fields playing in the season finale?
He gets the opportunity to get the reps. He's a young quarterback. More reps he get, the better. You go into next season feeling a certain way. I know everybody's worried about, well, you're not going to the playoffs. There's nothing left for the season. The coach is probably going to get fired. Why risk injury? Things that you can't think that way. You cannot think that way. You play guys that have the ability to play because they're healthy. And if he's a starting quarterback moving forward, he should be on the field playing. He needs the reps.
I'm with you, Key. It's like hosting a show, Max. There are different styles to different shows that you have to host, but the more you do it, the more comfortable, the more composure you have in doing so. You don't feel rushed or that you're stepping on one another, right? The more reps we have together, I'm not talking over you, you're not talking over the Key, because we understand each other's cadences the more that we work together. And I think from a point guard perspective, from a quarterback perspective, the more you see the speed of the game, the more you can become acclimated to it. The more you understand the tendencies of your players, your O-line, how they move, that only helps you in the future. And I think that's what this team needs Justin Fields to have more of.
What about, I know in boxing a lot of times when the guy doesn't have enough fights and someone will say to me, is he ready yet? And I'll think, not yet. Well, what's he going to really learn by fighting another, basically a setup fight, right? But it's the fact that you go to training camp preparing that you're going to have the event that night, that you go through the event, you gain experience that way. How much of it is simply that, Key, where Justin Fields is in that stage of his career where he needs the experience of preparing for game day, knowing he's going to start, starting against an NFL team, even if the offense changes next year and everything, going through those steps?
He needs the reps. He absolutely needs the reps. He needs to take these things, go through these steps, understand certain things, because he'll come out on the other side much better. How many times have you seen starting quarterbacks, solidified starting quarterbacks that have long-term contracts, big money contracts, their team isn't going anywhere, and they're starting in week 16, week 17 now because it's 17 weeks, but in the past, they're starting in week 15, 16. Let's take, for instance, a Matthew Stafford and the Detroit Lions. The last week of the season, Matthew Stafford was starting. Even though the Detroit Lions were going nowhere, he was still the starting quarterback, and he still had a lot of good football left in him.
And it's significant to me, too, the preparation of Justin Fields to take the next step in his career. Because by the way, his future is still up in the air. To me, I thought Justin Fields was going to be a superstar. Maybe he still winds up being a superstar. We don't know what's going to happen with these young quarterbacks yet. They haven't really established themselves. Any of the rookies other than Mac Jones haven't established themselves as, that dude's going to be really good. And even Mac Jones, let's see what he turns out to be. But if Aaron Rodgers leaves the NFC North after the season, Key, we know how you feel about this. He ain't going anywhere, right? Especially if they make the Super Bowl. But let's just entertain for a second the possibility that he's not in the NFC North. How does that change the expectation for Fields and potentially a new coach? Because all signs point to Matt Nagy getting replaced, right? So, but think about that. Does the division be wide open next year? Wide open. So what does that mean about the expectations for a second-year quarterback with the Bears?
You got to enjoy Max J because he loves to play this what-if game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, look,
hypotheticals.
It opens things up in the division. There's no question about it. We know that Jordan Love probably isn't ready in Green Bay. The Kirk Cousins watches on along with Mike Zimmer in Minnesota. Detroit is certainly a rebuilding team. So now all of a sudden, the Chicago Bears are going to become probably the best team in that division, especially if they go out and they get a guy like a Jim Harbaugh, right? Jim Harbaugh type coach comes in there and he knows what to do in the Chicago Bears offense as well as the defense, and hiring the right assistant coaches as long as the right general manager is there, picking the right players and aligning themselves up with Jim Harbaugh. Then all of a sudden, Chicago is now the forefront leader in the division with no Aaron Rodgers.
I wouldn't see Chicago. I would see Minnesota with Justin Jefferson, with Dalvin Cook, with the way they play, I mean, with the talent that they have, even if you don't like Kirk Cousins or not, I would see them as the favorite. But I would see Chicago knocking
as
right
the
on
riser.
the door.
Yeah.
Rising, right? Oh, well, if you know the ceiling is capped for Kirk Cousins and Minnesota to agree, you're like, oh, the ceiling is through the roof, right?
That's
for
the
a guy
thing.
like Justin Fields.
If Rodgers is out of division, the team with the quarterback with the highest eventual upside is Chicago. And you mentioned Jim Harbaugh, Key. You know, we'll see what LaFleur does without Rodgers if Rodgers leaves. But if Harbaugh's on the Bears, maybe they have the best coach in the division too, not only the quarterback with the highest upside.
What is the front office? Because when you talk about those losing seasons in San Francisco, and when Jim Harbaugh got there, remember Trent Baalke, who was the general manager of the Jacksonville Jaguars at the time, was the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers, and Mike Singletary was the coach. So a lot of those mainstay players that was a part of that core group that took them to the Super Bowl and to the championship games, that was all part of Trent Baalke's plan. Eventually that plan fell apart because him and Harbaugh, you know, you get into who gets the credit and da-da-da-da. I don't like you, you don't like me, I'm out of here, whatever. Now you got to find out who your general manager is going to be, because Jim Harbaugh was not picking the 49er players. It was Trent Baalke making those decisions with Harbaugh kind of, you know, signing off on certain guys, Jay.
I'll tell you what, Harbaugh's coach, Fields is quarterback. And by the way, Mike Zimmer and the defense that bothers Aaron Rodgers, right? If Rodgers ain't there anymore, maybe
and Mike Zimmer ain't there anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, if you're a Bears fan, it's got to be an exciting time, particularly if Rodgers leaves.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN Plus.